Before I start to speak about what's happening with the climate in the Arctic Ocean, I want to tell you a little bit about my background. So now you will have some cold pictures, which I think is quite appropriate for a day like this. And this is me, 24 years old, doing my first expedition across Greenland with two friends. Two divers and myself, we were working in the North Sea, and we decided to go on an adventure. And on this trip, I don't think I've ever been so cold and so miserable in my whole life. But at the same time, this is probably also the trip I've learned most from, because to learn from your mistake, that's probably the best teacher you can have. So that really prepared me for what was going to be the next adventure, and that was the North Pole. In three tough Norwegians, this is Erling Kagge, Geir Andby, and myself, who we set ourselves a really, really high goal. In 1990, we skied unsupported from Canada and all the way to the North Pole. We actually became the first to ski unsupported to the North Pole on this expedition, which means that we dragged everything we needed for the whole journey for 2 months in the sleds. There's no airdrops or dogs or snowmobiles that helps us on the way. It's just our own power. In 1994, I skied solo to the North Pole, from Siberia all the way to the geographical North Pole. And when I left that helicopter, I had 1,000 kilometers of ice in front of me, drifting ice. I was completely alone, no outside help, no satellite phone. And tell you what, this is one of my best experiences in my whole life. Simply because when you are by yourself for a long period of time, it's a kind of meditation. You get closer to yourself. You get that dialogue with the nature, and you reach maybe levels inside you that you didn't know existed. So, and that's actually one of the good things about being on a long trek like this, is that you're able to live here and now. You're present in your own life instead of all the time having to think about something that's going to happen tomorrow or you know, something in the future. So that's really one of the good things about doing expeditions like this. And since then, it's been many trips, and I often get the question, why do you do these long, hard trips into this hostile environment? But I think one of the reasons is that I grew up with the outdoor life. I like the outdoor life. I like the simple life in a tent. And you know, just cooking your food on a small stove, not having to worry about all the noise that is surrounding the modern world. I think that is a fascinating way of seeing it, and that's actually one of the reasons why I do these expeditions, in addition to adventures. In 1997, I skied solo all the way across the South Pole, and in 2001 I did the same at the North Pole. I skied alone from Cape Artucheski here to the North Pole and continue all the way across the Arctic Ocean. On these trips, I've been fortunate enough to meet some of the animals who lives up there. And you all know the polar bear. That's really the king of the Arctic, and it's a beautiful, beautiful animal, so big and so strong. And when you meet a polar bear up there, these guys have probably never met a human being before. And they probably also wonder if this two-legged creature can be eaten. So my job here is actually to convince him that that's not a good idea. So I have to try to scare him away, and actually many times it's enough to make some noises, or actually in this case I had a handgun which I used just to shoot a warning shot, and that doing that I was able to scare these guys away. So that's how we do it. Easy. You shouldn't think it was, very funny to do a big solo trip across the Arctic Ocean, but when I came to the North Pole, something strange happened. I was halfway, and it was a typical day to celebrate, so I was in the tent relaxing when I suddenly heard helicopter outside, and I wondered what is happening now. And I got my clothes on, I got out of the tent, and the helicopter landed just outside my camp, and out of the helicopter came a real Arabic sheikh.
Hello. How are you?
This is Børge Ousland.
I'm very pleased to meet you, and I heard very nice that you have been traveling from Siberia to going to Canada.
Canada. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
And
nice.
how long it will be? 4.5 months.
No, not that much. For me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you start 2 months ago,
Yeah, 2 months ago.
and you need 1.5 months.
Yeah, so 3.5 months.
Yeah, 3.5
3.5
months. It's
months.
a lot of. Yeah.
Yes, that it is. Yeah,
It's a
indeed.
huge. It's a huge.
For me, I have been here only 30 minutes now.
Yeah.
I've been 52 days alone.
Alone. Good luck.
Yeah.
It really is something great, I hear.
You want to take a picture with us?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah,
Yes,
I would like
yes. Thank you very much. It is our honor, pleasure to take a picture. Yes.
Let me take another one.
In 2006, I did another epic journey with this guy. It's Mike Horn from South Africa. We did a really, really great trip together. We skied to the North Pole during the dark period in the winter, in the months of January, February, and March. And North Pole in the winter is very special. The sun rises at the North Pole around 23rd of March, and it goes down 23rd of September. So it's actually 1 day and 1 night at the North Pole during the whole year. So this is really, really one of the most difficult trips I've done. So we were fighting extreme cold weather. We were swimming across open water actually to be able to move forward in the pack ice most of the time just with the headlamps to be able to find a way. But at the same time, this trip is also one of the most beautiful trips I've done, and some of the strongest memories I have from all my expeditions actually come from this journey, and especially when we had the full moon and could see a little bit of the world we had around us, this bleak light from the full moon just spreading across the pack ice, and Mike and myself 1,000 kilometers from the nearest people. We felt just that small, and we felt really, really fragile, but at the same time we also understood that the nature has a value in itself, and that nature is something that we really have to take care about. Back in the 90s, there was not too much talk about climate change. The ice was, changing a little bit from one year to the other, but in general, there was no major change. The ice was just like it was 100 years ago, more or less. But in 1994, I got a mission from the Norwegian Polar Institute to measure the thickness of the ice. So I measured the thickness of the pack ice all the way from Siberia to Canada, so that they could have some reference, and also so that they could calibrate their satellites. And in 2001, I did the same when I did the crossing of the Arctic Ocean. And around 2000, that's when we really saw the big change, that we actually saw that climate change was happening here and now. And in the Arctic was the first place we really saw that climate change is happening here and now. It's not something that is happening in the future, it's happening now. And around that time, the ice started to become thinner and just started on that decline. And now the ice is about 30% less in coverage than it was when I started just a few decades ago. And one of the reasons for that is that this white protective shield, which is the pack ice of the Arctic Ocean, that reflects the energy from the sun back to space. And when that is melting and you have open water that has a darker surface, the energy is absorbed by the water. And the ocean temperature is rising. And that is actually one of the main reasons why the temperature in the Arctic rises twice as fast as the global average. It's just like if you're in the sun, you feel the roof of a white car, it's reasonably cold, but if you touch a black car, it's really, really warm. And that's the same things that is happening with the water. The dark water absorbs the energy from the sun. And to give you the kind of the outline of that situation, this image, this green line here, that's the average since 1979, when they started with satellite monitoring of the Arctic. And this is the actual sea ice just a few years ago. And there you can see the enormous amount of area that had melted in just a few decades, the area with the size of Greenland. So that really has a huge, huge impact on the temperature in the Arctic. So the Arctic is warming up rapidly, twice as fast as the global average. So, and of course, you know, does that matter? You know, the North Pole is very far away from most countries, not many people live up there. But when the Arctic is warming up, the whole world is warming up, and what is happening as a cause of that is that the big glaciers on land are melting. And you all know that a glacier which is melting will in the end run into the ocean and contribute to sea level rise. So that is actually happening here and now. And my next project is together with this guy. It's Vincent Colliard from France. And we are crossing now our goal is to cross the 20 biggest ice caps in the world. We are called the project Ice Legacy, where we document these glaciers, we take measurements, and we transmit to a broader audience what is happening with these huge world glaciers. And the researchers who are dealing with these issues, they estimate that the sea level this century can be as much as 1 meter. And think about that, 1 meter sea level rise globally. That's quite huge, and I guess you also can understand the consequences. Most of the world's populations, they live around in the coastal area, and if you have a sea level rise of 1 meter, the Maldives is gone, and millions of people will have to move somewhere, and this will have a dramatic effect on food production, and not to speak about economy. So it will really, really turn the world upside down. And my take on this is that it's better to do something about the problem now than wait until this is happening. And the question, of course, is, well, what do we do about it? Well, I don't pretend that I have all the answers to that questions, but I know one thing, and that is that we, at some stage, very, very soon, have to move and make that transition into renewable energy, into cleaner energy. And I know it's not popular to point the finger at the oil industry, especially not in Norway. We have made the whole wealth of our society on oil or the coal industry, but that change has to happen. And even if oil and coal are cheap now, the cost of continue to use it will be just so much higher than any other alternative you can think about. And the alternatives, they are here and now. The energy from the sun that reaches the earth every 2 minutes equals the amount of total consumption of mankind for 1 year. Every 2 minutes. And you have the wind blowing day and night, so the energy is here. It's just a matter of finding the technology and utilize this energy. And I think that especially a country like Korea, who is a high-tech country, very innovative, with a good economy, they can take a leading role in this matter. And I know there is, of course, a conservative element in this, but I also think that moving into the green sector and industry and technology also represent an opportunity. So my challenge to you is simply to make that transition. Do it now. Work for a better future for all of us. I'm an optimist because it's just too late to be a pessimist. Thank you very much.